The DA has taken its fight against the Employment Equity Act to court. In addition, the party says it will scrap the legislation once it governs through a coalition after next year's general elections. The DA marched to Parliament to highlight its objection to the act, which was signed by President Cyril Ramaphosa earlier this year. The Minister of Employment and Labour, Thulas Nxesi, now joins us on the line for more on the Employment Equity Bill. Minister, good morning. Thank you so much for making time for us. A lot of opposition. It's not the first time that there has been this opposition, but now also the DA quite clear that they are going to court. What's your reaction to it?
Good morning, Adrian. I think the call or the charge by the DA that ANC is racializing work opportunities. They've forgotten one thing, that work in South Africa has been racialized for centuries. And have they not forgotten that the job reservation under the apartheid system, where certain jobs were reserved to the whites only, and the people rose against that. The reality now is that we are dealing with this legacy of trying to transform the workplace. The Employment Equity Act was passed in 1998. It has always been there. The DA has always been opposing it, but it is constitutional. They've run into a number of courts. And what we want to emphasize, this is meant to encourage equal opportunities in the workplace where the black people, and when we say black people, we're talking about Africans, coloreds, and Indians. But we're also extending that to women and people with disabilities who continue to be underrepresented at the higher levels of the workforce. Let me just remind you something, Adrian. If we're to talk statistics now, it's a known fact that as we consolidate 30 years of the democracy and over 24 years of the Employment Equity Act, the pace of economic transformation remains at a snail's pace. And I can confirm to you that more than 50%, close to 60% of the top echelons in many companies, top management, is still occupied by the white people. The black people are far below that. It's worse when it comes to women. So the intention here is to fast-track the process. All along, we had talked about employment equity targets, which we said the employers must implement them voluntarily. But nothing has happened, and that's why we've decided to come up with this amendment, which empowers the minister to consult with the various sectors, and they set the targets, and companies go and put their employment equity plans according to what has been agreed in the sector. They are not going to be imposed, they are going to be negotiated.
Yeah. The Commission for Employment Equity in their latest report does indicate that 62% of the top management positions in many companies are still being held by white people, while Africans only occupy 16%, and this is despite Africans having 48% more qualifications compared to their 30% white counterparts. Then what is the problem? What do you think it is? What is the reason behind this lack of transformation?
Well, it's very clear. It's resistance from the white companies. It doesn't mean that you don't have qualified people from the, what I would say, from the other racial groups, from the Africans, the Indians, and the coloreds. We do have those people. But the issue is people want to protect and preserve the apartheid privilege. They think that others must remain low in the ladder. That's the issue which we are dealing with. There have been numerous programs which have been trying to upscale or upgrade the education system of the black people. There are many accountants, chartered accountants, there are many lawyers who are qualified. There are many of those people who can be able to be at the top echelons of those companies. But it is resistance and preserving the apartheid privilege.
Yeah. So how do you deal then with that resistance? Is setting targets really the answer? And of course, there are fines that are attached to companies who don't adhere to the legislation as well as the targets that have been set. But yet again, this is nothing new, Minister. This has happened before. And we're told also, when you look at, for instance, questions around the collusions amongst companies, that companies also budget and set aside monies that they'll pay for fines where they're found to be in not complying with the legislation. So what's going to happen differently? Why aren't there any criminal charges being preferred against companies?
Remember, Adrian, that all along it has been voluntary. And now it's no more voluntary. What we're going to say now, it's mandatory. They must show us their 5-year plans. If they do not do that, they will have to face the consequences. We've already indicated that those who are doing business with government, that will be stopped if they do not want to respect the law. But also we will go further and adopt other harsher measures. But I must be able to emphasize this. We don't start with punitive measures. We start with corrective measures, where we're going to sit and show them where they are wrong. But also, I must say, some of them have claimed that they do not understand what is going on. We are now already in the road shows in the different provinces, talking to the employers and the employees, telling them how this works. And where we've gone, people understand it. And one case in point is the Solidarity Union, which went to the extent of reporting us at the level of the ILO. And we had that case at the ILO, but it was referred back. Once we sat down with them and had explained how this is going to work, they decided to withdraw their complaint, and they've said they're going to withdraw their court case. So we are continuing with what we call the road shows. We will go to those communities which have been misled by the DA and explain where this comes from. In fact, I must emphasize, the racial grouping which is seriously affected, less represented in South Africa, are the colored people. Now it's twisted all of a sudden that we are trying to deal with the colored population. It's very far from the truth what the DA is doing. It's just cheap politicking on the eve of the elections.
Yeah, but Minister, also though, to the DA's defense, this is racializing job opportunities because you're trying to deal here with a race-related issue that equates to whether somebody gets a job opportunity or doesn't get a job opportunity.
No. We're talking about sector targets.
Yeah, but based on race.
Yes, you can't run away from that.
Yeah, so the DA is right to
system.
So the DA is right to say
entrenched racism. In order to be able to reverse that, you must take into cognizance those who were excluded by the previous system.
Yeah.
What is the other way of doing it?
Yeah, so you do agree with the DA then that they are right to say that this is racializing job opportunities?
It's not racializing job opportunities because nobody is going to be removed on the basis that he or she is white or is whatever, and then you put the black person. No, that is not going to be done. What we are saying is, as you are dealing with your issues and opportunities are getting created in the management or whatever, you must consider the black people who have not been in those echelons. Why would you not do that? Or I was trying to suggest that the top management must remain white and all the others are below, like what is called an Irish coffee society, where you have sprinkles of the black people at the top, and then we sit and look at that.
Yeah, again, Minister, I argue and say that you and the DA seem to be speaking the same language here, even though you don't want to agree that these are racialized job opportunities. We're speaking about job opportunities, meaning that the job isn't there already, but the opportunity would be created, not people that are already within the sector. And I understand what you mean, that the DA is wrong to say that people who are already employed will be fired, because that would be unconstitutional. But it is the opportunities that are created that then become racialized, that says that this is what we expect in a certain sector when opportunities, when vacancies are available.
No, Adrian, we're not racializing that. We are saying, take into consideration that there are people whom you have never promoted who have the necessary skills. They must also, if we're talking about the new South Africa, they must also be considered. You can't sit with your company being whites only at the level of management. And when we are trying to reverse that, you say you are racializing the opportunities. That's not racializing, you're balancing the opportunities.
Yeah, through race. Then the other part is that the DA is arguing that what would happen is you'd find that many companies moving ahead with mechanization, which means that some people would lose their job opportunities. What's your response to that?
Come again?
The DA is arguing because of this legislation, what would happen is that some companies, specifically in the manufacturing sector as well, will move towards more mechanization, meaning that they won't be relying on warm bodies, human beings, and therefore what would happen to those job opportunities? What's your response to that?
I don't think they must use the issue of technological advancement and mechanization in order to think that they are dealing with this particular matter. That phenomenon is a logical phenomenon that as the society is developing technologically, indeed, a lot of people in the factories, in the companies are going to be replaced by mechanization, which is not, the motivation is not the issue of the affirmative action. The motivation is the developments in the economy itself, developments in the digitization. We are all seeing that. So they cannot use that. In any case, those companies are already mechanizing already. Those companies are already putting a lot of technology. It has to do with the modern times in which we are. The workplace in 20 years ago or in 100 years ago has totally changed. So it's not a response to the employment equity. It is a natural development which we are seeing.
Minister, so let's say, for instance, an industry or sector has reached its particular target. Let's say maybe on white people or on Indian people, that target has been reached. What happens to Indian people in that community who are seeking a job opportunity and the job opportunity is there, but the sector has already hit its target? What happens to that individual?
If a particular company has reached its target, it's good. What they are going to do is, after 5 years, because we're talking about 5-year plans, after 5 years, they will have to put other plans to consider other things which they have not considered. But we have said, and I want you to understand this, the issues of the affirmative action, the issues which we're dealing with today of employment equity, these are temporary measures which must take into consideration the active population or economically active population in those particular regions. So there are shifts in terms of the migrations. People moving from the rural areas into the big centers or moving backwards. So as long as there are those shifts, we are going to be needing to deal with this particular issue. And what I'm trying to say is nobody will be disadvantaged because of affirmative action. It can't.
Yeah, but Minister, you haven't answered the question. What happens to the Indian person who comes to a company and the company then says, we've reached our target of Indian people? What happens to that individual? What must they do? What would your advice be to that professional?
The company, there's nothing like that. That is a very unfortunate example. It will never happen. It will never happen. If the opportunities are not there, they will not be there not because of race. They will not be there. They will be there. If there's such a problem, that problem will only be there because you can't employ more than what you want. It's as simple as that.
Yes, exactly. So what happens to that Indian person?
What should happen? Is he supposed to be employed?
That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm asking you, Minister. That's what I'm asking you, Minister. What's your advice? What should that Indian person do? What would your advice be to that Indian person?
Must look for the jobs in the other companies.
Okay, so meaning that they should be moving to other provinces as well?
It's not about moving into other provinces. We always look jobs all over. Wherever there are opportunities, we will go for those opportunities.